work my butt off, loan you money, and have you give me back less than what I loaned you. That makes sense. I'm not sure what planet that makes sense on, but it makes sense to them. But they won't institute that immediately because they're not going to want you to know that anything has changed.
But it is a pretext for control.
100%.
Social control. In fact, if you actually
100%.
read the executive order from President Biden on CBDCs, it stated that they must mitigate climate change and promote financial inclusion and equity. The term financial inclusion was mentioned 5 times in the document. Equity, climate change. They showed up 4 times each.
Right. What is financial inclusion? Can you please tell me how somebody that lives in a little village in Africa understands anything about debt and finance? So they don't talk about education, do they? No. They talk about inclusion. Because if I owe you $100, I got a problem. If I owe you $1 million, you got a problem.
Yes, they will be able to, like you said, keep their thumb on us and be able to control what we spend on what and when, how quickly. Yes. Yeah, we're going to get to gold and silver in a second.
That's why you have to.
Yeah, you have to have it. I made a video last year. I expressed how I thought the acceptance of a retail CBDC would happen with new stimulus during the next financial crisis. I think it's going to heavily rely on a generational mindset that's shared among younger millennials and Gen Zs. You know, the young people, Lynette.
That have
me.
grown up with the technology.
Right.
We were just talking about that earlier.
They don't have qualms over giving up their online privacy for an app, let alone digital stimulus from the government.
Yep. Yeah, because people, this is something, what money is should be taught in kindergarten. But if they did that and people understood that, originally, you just kind of step back to move forward. What was money? It was supposed to be a tool of measure, a tool of barter, a short-term store of value to make sure you were fairly paid for your labor, and a long-term store of value so that no matter when you chose to use it, you were still being fairly paid for your labor. We needed a system where the society could specialize because one person cannot do it all. Well, they eliminated the long-term store of value, and I can't tell you when they did that officially. I was doing some work prepping to be a keynote speaker at an event, and so I went in and I wanted to talk about that, and I'm like, wait, when did they take that fourth function of money away? I mean, it's more honest because inflation robs you of that, so okay. But when they institute the CBDCs, so think about this. You get a paycheck, which automatically, no choice, goes right into the bank. The bank is immediately charging negative rates. So now, even on a short-term basis, you are not being fairly paid for your labor, even in these inflated dollars. So what they're reducing money to is simply a tool, a short-term, very short-term tool of measure and a tool of barter. And what's going to justify money creation? Because they're not very forthcoming with that information. So in some instances, I've read where the new money is going to be created from debt. But in order to do that, they're going to have to get rid of all the debt that's already out there. That they can hyperinflate it away.
Yeah. The reset, right.
The reset. Oh, absolutely. And I've been talking about the reset since 2009.
And I've been listening to you talk about the reset since 2009. Let's get back to gold and silver for a minute, too, because I have 2 questions about that. Gold and silver, right here. I love gold and silver. All right.
Gold and silver, I trust.
Yes, exactly. First, what does a retail CBDC mean to the price of gold and silver? And second, how will gold and silver actually be used once a retail level CBDC, God forbid, becomes an everyday reality. So the price and how's it used?
Well, we will, look, as long as Wall Street can create lots and lots and lots of digital gold and silver, they can continue to suppress the price, because we all know a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency, and that's what they don't want you to understand. And they don't want you to own it, because once you take in possession of it, it becomes invisible to them, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's the first thing, but understand that when the public loses confidence, those overnight resets are when gold and silver will begin to go toward their true fundamental value, because they have to get the population's confidence back, and this garbage, the fiat money, has no intrinsic value, and it's only used in one place. So they take gold, that is the primary currency metal, and here's the answer to your second question, okay? Physical gold, physical silver is used in every single sector of the global economy. So it has the broadest base of functionality. And according to the Bank for International Settlements, is the only financial asset that runs zero counterparty risk. So you hold it, you own it, okay? But because both gold and silver, it is used in medicine, electronics, the financial system, art, jewelry, food, space travel, and on and on and on. Every single industry of the global financial system, so every sector, not just the financial system, every single sector. So what does that do? That means that 100% of the time you have demand. And when you go in the physical world, there is a finite amount of it. Period. End of discussion.
Can't print it.
Can't print it, that's right. And they've tried to figure out how to recreate the qualities that both these metals have in the lab, and they have never been able to do that, period. They have not been able to do that. So right now we're on a dual system, right? Where you've got the paper price of gold that people look on CNBC or Bloomberg or in the paper or whatever and says, oh, spot's at $2,001.39 or whatever, and silver spot is at $25 and change, whatever. But they can create as much gold and silver as they want that does not exist.
Right.
But what have we seen with the premiums when you want to buy the physical? So we're seeing in that area, what will happen is the premiums will get larger and larger as they are now, and will more accurately. At this point, they are not accurate to the fundamental value at all, which I would gauge is somewhere around 15,000 or more globally. If it were the U.S., it'd be more than probably about 60,000, 70,000 an ounce, which I know sounds outrageous, but this is a $20 gold coin, right? So 1900, well, if you told somebody someday that 1 ounce of gold is going to be trading at $2,000 on the spot market from 20, they would have told you were crazy. So not so crazy, because it's more reflective of its true demand and supply quality. So there's lots of demand that's coming for both of these entities, but it will be more realistic to a true supply and demand economy.
Right. We need to look at silver and gold and price it in terms of goods and services, not in fiat dollars, not in fiat currencies. And it's one of the reasons why I buy gold and silver and never sell it. I have no interest in converting this back into some fiat currency that is being inflated away.
But when we go to a CBDC, right, then, it used to be, look, when they go to the CBDC, people are going to think, oh, okay, they've solved it. But they haven't solved it. they have to get rid of all of the debt. They have to finish the transfer of wealth. The way that we are all going to know that they're truly at the end is when they put a component of gold in it, because that creates fiscal responsibility.
And it's not like the reset, some people say, is just going to be when the next entity, like the IMF comes in with the SDR, the special drawing rights, and says, oh, we're going to save central banks. Well, the SDR is simply a basket of a bunch of leading fiat currencies. It's still not real money. That's not going to work. It's not going to save us. They're going to still try it.
Yes. So, what people also have to understand is you vote with your purse and your wallet. So if you buy the money market funds or stocks or annuities or ETFs or any of that garbage, that's your vote, and you're basically saying it's okay with me if you take all my wealth. When you buy gold and silver, that is when you are actually taking your wealth out of the system, holding it in real money, and when you need this garbage to transact, you can convert it into that garbage and then use it like that, rather than giving these central banks an opportunity to steal more of your wealth.
Let me play devil's advocate with you, Lynette, just for a minute. So, okay, fine. The whole economic system has been increasingly unsound. It's a con game, but it's been that way for so long, Lynette. Why can't it just keep on going? Look, the same people were saying the same thing during the financial crisis, the global recession, and look what they did. They can kick this can, I don't say down the road, I say up the mountain, as long as they want. Why is it going to end? And why are we getting close to that, Lynette?
Great question. I love that question. Okay, here's why we are at the end. First of all, I've been studying currencies and currency life cycles since 1987. And there are patterns that you see 100% of the time. So frankly, if we're doing the same thing and you're seeing all those same patterns, and I see all of them right now, chances are you're going to get the same results. And there are over 9,800 currencies that no longer live, so you've got a lot of data to draw on. But officially, my favorite chart, right, if you said to me you can only use one chart, then the one that I would choose is from the Federal Reserve Education Department, the FRED, F-R-E-D, and you just in the search bar put purchasing power of the consumer dollar. And what you will see is in 1913 there was $1 worth of purchasing power, and today there is barely more than 3 cents. So, one of the big problems and why we can't kick the can down the road is because there's no more purchasing power to inflate away. The second reason is because the key tool that the central bankers have to regulate the rate and speed of inflation are interest rates. And we were anchored at 0 for like 14 years.
14, 15 years, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That did a lot of stuff to the banking system, as we just saw.
Yeah.
But aside from that, they're raising the rates only so they can lower them again. And truthfully, they experimented with negative rates, and that didn't work, did it? What are they debating? Oh, maybe there'll be one more rate increase. Maybe they'll cut. Blah, 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 blah. It's all garbage. It's just window dressing. To make people think that they actually have some choices, they have no choices. It doesn't matter. If they cut, well, that'll just speed up the inflation to a more noticeable level. Because guess what happened? Even though they were trying to run off their balance sheet, in other words, reduce their balance sheet, that went from $800 billion in 2007 to $8.6 trillion just recently. So they tried to run it off very, very slowly, a little bit. In other words, sell those bonds, treasuries, and mortgage-backed securities, and boom, if you look at their balance sheet, up like a rocket ship again.
Mm-hmm.
So they can say, don't call this QE, like the Bank of England, too. when they were doing all their money printing, buying the bonds because their treasury market was falling apart. Don't call it QE. Well, arose by any other name. You know, you can call it whatever you want. They don't say confiscation, but isn't inflation a form of confiscation? By confiscating the value, the purchasing power value of your money and your work?
Well, the chart I absolutely love, the one that shows over centuries global reserve currencies burning out. They keep it around, what, every 100 years or so, they're gone. And I also think of the quote from, I think it's Ernest Hemingway, when he was describing his own personal bankruptcy. He said it occurred gradually, then suddenly.
Yep. And what's kept us in the position of the world reserve currency that enabled all of that was the petrodollar. And Saudi Arabia, I mean, first of all, it's OPEC plus. It was the plus. Russia is the plus, right? And they just completed a couple of deals, like 2 deals in China for their refineries, and have come out and said, well, we can accept any currency for our oil. It doesn't just have to be dollars. So if it doesn't just have to be dollars, then why do all those central banks need to continue to hold it? And did we not just show the world that if you don't do what we want through the SWIFT system, the global payment system, that we will, boom, cut you off? So our arrogance, our level of arrogance is absolutely incredible to me.
And people call it the fourth turning. A shift in the way the world operates. And I think we are living in that day right now. In fact, I keep saying it's this decade. I don't see us coming out of this decade without an absolute reset, a complete change in the way and the central bank digital currencies will be the tool that they're able to engineer that reset.
So, I mean, they're going to bring that out, but until there's a component of gold in there, and the IMF has discussed putting a component of gold. Originally, it was based on gold, and then, of course, when we went to pure fiat, they took the gold out. But once there's a component of gold in there, but I am in 100% agreement with what you're saying here. And, you know, but it also makes me wonder. I'm 100% certain, I'm a gazillion% certain that global central banks understand that we are at the end of this currency's life cycle, right? I mean, everything has a life cycle. I guarantee you I'm at a different place in my life cycle at 68 than my granddaughter that just turned 8, right? It's a different life cycle.
Right.
So if they absolutely know that, and I'm certain they do because the currencies don't have any value left, and they're anchored at 0, right? So if that is indeed the case, are you absolutely certain that this whole whole issue, and there's definitely a transition of power, is not part of a attempt to create a controlled implosion, demolition, to go into that next iteration? Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And to have a foundation of gold and silver is kind of critical because this is recognizably vulnerable.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
So here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
So here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Well, here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
So here's the deal.
And here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal. Because here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Federal Reserve is considering a digital dollar. The implications for privacy and freedom are frightening. Hello, I'm Steve Forbes, and this is What's Ahead, where you get the insights you need to better navigate these turbulent times. Central banks around the world are examining whether they should create digital currencies. China is gradually enrolling one already. Japan may launch a digital yen by 2026. India is moving ahead in this front. The Federal Reserve is on the bandwagon here, where experiments and studies are already underway. These moves to what is dubbed a central bank digital currency, CBDC, may sound like making sure financial institutions are keeping up to date. and ensuring currency stability amid cryptos that are crashing in value, along with the sensational multi-billion-dollar collapse of crypto exchange FTX. Now, advocates say CBDCs will help central banks better fight inflation because they'll have more direct control over the money supply, that it will sharply speed up transaction payments between buyers and sellers in the marketplace, where settlements, most particularly if they cross borders, can take days before a payment clears and you can access your money. It will also help fight money laundering and keep rogue nations from evading sanctions. But central bank digital money is ominous. The downside of governments being able to track digitally every single product or service you buy and sell is chilling. This is where China's headed. India has been trying to reassure skeptics by declaring that transactions would stay, quote, largely anonymous, end quote. But government bureaucracies won't be able to resist the temptation. They'll always have excuses like fighting crime or combating tax cheating. CBDCs would give officials a powerful tool of control and manipulation. It would be an irresistible drug for central banks trying to direct the economy. If they think the economy is overheating, they could freeze a certain percentage of your cash. Or if these poobahs decide that things are too slow, they could punish people who, they conclude, are saving too much. Spend it or lose it, they could decree. If you have undesirable political views, you might not be able to access your money, since traditional cash would be outlawed and your digital cash would be in a government-approved digital wallet. Digital cash would even allow governments to fine-tune monetary policy with individualized interest rates. Then there's the all-too-real challenge of security. Digital cash systems would be a hacker's delight. The treasure trove of data governments would have on every aspect of your life would be breached. As for speeding up payments, that can be achieved with improved electronic transfers. The Federal Reserve already has an experiment with that underway called FedNow. Congress should immediately hold hearings on the subject of central bank digital cash and ban the Fed from creating a digital dollar. Government digital cash is a formula for tyranny. I'm Steve Forbes. Thanks for listening. Do send in your comments and suggestions. I look forward to being with you soon again.
Okay, here's a video I discovered after yesterday's broadcast. I want people to pay attention to how these people are noticing the same thing I'm noticing about the Democrats and their lack of respect for religion. This is the undertones of what's going on in this country is religious in nature. And I want you to listen very closely to this 7-minute clip because these people are really, they're identifying what the issues are without saying it, without really saying the name of the individuals. But I want you to just pay attention to this.
The Biden administration's Department of Justice offering what critics call a sweetheart deal to a transgender vandal caught on camera smashing and spray painting a Catholic church in Washington State last year. This is surveillance video of 31-year-old Maeve Noda in action, throwing a rock at a glass window while a woman was praying inside. She had to lock herself in. She was so scared. This person then spray painted the sacred building's walls with profane and anti-Catholic messages like religion of hate, woman haters, and more. Noda also defaced the church's beloved statue of the Virgin Mary and spray painted a church worker in the face before resisting arrest. Despite those damages to the church totaling nearly $100,000, the DOJ recommended, wait for it, 0 jail time, and instead recommended just 3 years probation. This plea deal sharply contrasts with the Biden administration's treatment of, for example, pro-life activist and Father Mark Houck. The DOJ charged Houck with violating the FACE Act back in October of 21 after he shoved a Planned Parenthood volunteer while defending his son. The FBI later raided Houck's Pennsylvania home, arresting him in front of his wife and 7 children after state police declined to press charges. Houck faced 11 years in federal prison before he was acquitted earlier this year. Kellyanne, the contrast is nothing short of stunning, and it's unacceptable.
Yes, and in Joe Biden and Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, you see that parents at school board meetings are concerned about curricula, and lost learning are domestic terrorists. This has been a pretty anti-Catholic administration for Mr. I'm Catholic Joe Biden. They're openly hostile to religion overall, and I think it's affecting a lot of Hispanic voters, Asian American voters in this country. They are realigning for many reasons, but one is the open hostility toward religion.
Okay, I want you to pay attention to the Attorney General that's behind all this is a Jewish man by the name of Merrick Garland, who was nominated for the Supreme Court and wasn't able to get that seat after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, who was also Jewish. But I want you to pay attention to what this man has been doing since he's been in office, the attacks that he's been orchestrating against religion, and then how he plays innocent after the fact. You just really need to really pay attention to this man right here and what he's doing. And you'll start to see the tactics that they use in establishing, they're trying to bring in a new world order here. Right now, they are destabilizing the country by creating a lot of turmoil. Remember, it's a new world order, so they have to establish chaos first.
Look at the treatment of Amy Coney Barrett, who is eminently qualified to sit where she now works in the United States Supreme Court. She went there with not a single Democratic senator's vote, even though when she went to Senate confirmation, they dressed her down about her Catholicism. Dianne Feinstein said, it's obvious that, you know, your doctrine burns inside of you, as if anything burns inside of Dianne Feinstein at this point.
Okay. Notice that you'll never hear them mention the nationality of these people they're talking about. I want to bring that to your attention. Dianne Feinstein is Jewish. And I'm going to run the clip of what she was just talking about because I saw the same clip. This right here, what she's talking about is made me post this video because they're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, that nobody else seems to see. But here's a clip of Dianne Feinstein dragging Amy Coney Barrett at her confirmation hearing about her religious beliefs.
Why is it that so many of us on this side have this very uncomfortable feeling that, you know, dogma and law are two different things? And I think whatever a religion is, it has its own dogma. The law is totally different. And I think in your case, Professor, when you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you. And that's a concern when you come to big issues that large numbers of people have fought for years in this country.
And so the hostility towards Amy Coney Barrett, who lives her faith every day, they're wearing the cross as a Catholic, had been a professor at Notre Dame, has 7 children, 2 adopted from Haiti. That hostility contrasted with this. By the way, this, I think, Kaylee, I know people are here, are attorneys, that looked like assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, spray painting somebody in the face, throwing a rock where you know somebody is praying on the other side. And I just want to quickly remind the audience, the fact that the DOJ was involved at all means there were federal crimes committed here. And they completely balked on that.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for that. Kaylee, not only are these hate crimes, but yes, not only did this person spray paint that churchgoer in the face, which is absolutely an aggravated assault and can be a felony in Washington state, but that person also, with a backpack full of spray cans, beat and shattered the police vehicle when they were resisting arrest, and yet somehow that's characterized simply as a vandal. I've been to service many times at St. Louis there in Bellevue, Washington. It's a beautiful church. It's a beautiful community, and it breaks my heart, not just that this happened, but that this happened in a world, in an administration where there is zero accountability because somehow Catholic protection and Catholic practice of faith matters less.
Yeah, resisting arrest, that happened too, as you noted. Look, viewers can do math. The American people can do math. When you have an administration that won't use the word Christian when 6 Christians are murdered, when you have an administration whose FBI talks about going after radical traditional Catholics, When you have, just yesterday we learned from Jim Jordan, an undercover agent, and the talk of going into Catholic churches, and then this, when Mike Lee puts forward, there have been 30...
I want you to pay attention to the fact that these are Christian women. Okay, this is Christian. They're not bringing this, they're not saying this, but these are Christian women. Kayleigh McKinney, she always has her cross on her neck, even back when she was the speaker for Donald Trump, the press secretary for Donald Trump. Always had her came to the podium with her cross on because she was going against CNN reporters, all of whom were Jewish. I'll show you that in a little bit.
4 arrests of pro-lifers, many of whom have been exonerated in courts of law, 81 attacks on abortion facilities, pro-life facilities, and only 2 prosecuted. That doesn't include Catholic churches. What does that all add up to? An overt anti-conservative, anti-Catholic, anti-Christian bias on the part of this administration. It's not that hard. You just add up the pieces and you see what they equal.
She's right. It's not that hard. Why? The question is, why can't the American people see this? Because they think that white people and Jewish people are the same. They think they're the same. They can't see it. They don't know where the attack is coming from. These people see it. They see it very clearly.
And yet this persecution, Kayleigh, is considered a complex, a fabricated one in this country, but if you leave this country, then it's accepted as an actual phenomenon. Bill, last year the Attorney General testified in front of Congress that, as you mentioned, the pro-life center attackers, that they're just too clever for the FBI.
Those who are attacking the pregnancy resources centers, which is a horrid thing to do, are doing this at night, in the dark. These people who are doing this are clever and are doing it in secret. We intend, if we find them, to do that. There is a
so you can't find them.
If you have information about those groups, we would be happy to...
That is your job.
That is your job, Attorney General.
I guess they didn't see all the TV cameras out there when that was happening, right? I was just looking at this story out of Washington State. He smashed 2 glass doors with rocks, spray painted the church's outside walls with F Catholics, rot in your fake hell, kid groomers, woman haters. This is around the time that Roe v. Wade was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. A church staff member was spray painted across the face. I think you mentioned that. When officers showed up, he used a backpack full of spray paint cans to hit the police car. He was drunk during the arrest, or appeared to be intoxicated. I don't know if he was even a DUI or a breathalyzer test.
Must have taken the day off from work.
I mean, if any citizen does this anywhere, you're doing time.
Oh, yeah. Imagine if that had happened at a synagogue.
Correct. Much less a church.
Exactly.
Well, she threw it in there. What if it was a synagogue? She let it slip. She said, what if it was a synagogue? Pay attention.
Exactly. It is appalling, Harris, and yet that was explained away by saying, this person was intoxicated and angry about Roe v. Wade, but nothing excuses anti-Christian, anti-any religion hate crimes, and that's what this was, and this administration lets them get away with it.
I would say maybe the only people, in our country right now who understand this at the level of Christians are in the Jewish faith.
Now, here come one of their lap dogs. Always going to be a sister. I trying to throw some water on the fire. Well, there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there. They're trying to, and that's not to say that all the Jewish people are involved in this. Absolutely not. This is absolutely a Zionist thing. But notice how they get us to downplay things for them. Just pay attention to the roles we play in all of this. Just start paying attention to that. That's the point I wanted to bring out.
I mean, there's a lot of anti-Semitism that's rocking out there right now. So I've had people in the Jewish faith say we need to work together on securing these places so that, in fact, Ari Fleischer and I had this conversation just personally off camera recently. And he said they are starting to team up now, some of the synagogues, to try to figure out how to protect those softer targets. I mean, you have a person kneeling to pray, and then you have this violent actor who gets off with nothing compared to what he should have gotten off with, or should have gotten. Throwing a rock through a window, attacking that structure, so on and so forth. So I do think that there is just this anti-movement of Christian and Jewish faiths in this country. But it is sought after by the FBI. where Christians are concerned.
That's why your book is so important. That's
And
why
just
people
think-
are reading your book and Shannon's book and Ainsley's book. Ainsley going to Asbury, Ohio, to that university, and I mean, there's a hunger for what your message is.
Just quickly noting, Tim Scott talked about in this video protecting the Judeo-Christian community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, watch how the CNN reporter Jim Acosta attacks President Donald Trump. And Jim Acosta, once again, is Jewish. You just decide for yourself, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
Do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election to try
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come and get through a process.
Why are they so concerned with allowing illegal aliens in? That's the next question you need to ask yourself. Undocumented. Why is that?
I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood.
Oh, that was a little slight jab at them right there, you know, with the Sandy Hook and the crisis actors and all of that. A lot of the shootings and everything have been alleging that there were actors, you know, coming from Hollywood. There was a lot of evidence to substantiate that, but it's all been scraped off of YouTube now. You probably have to go to somewhere like BitChute and things like that to find it. But that wasn't innocent. That was Trump throwing a jab at them.
These were people. This was an actual, you know, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough.
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have...
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation? Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead.
Peter, go ahead. In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either. So
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
you are the best,
Mr. President. You repeatedly over the course of
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said Democrats would unleash a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you pitting Americans? Why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
No,
Peter,
I'm just asking the question.
Let me just tell you, very simple, because they're very weak on crime. Because they have often suggested, members and people within the Democrat Party at a high level have suggested getting rid of ICE, getting rid of law enforcement. That's not going to happen, okay? We want to be strong on the borders. We want to be strong on law enforcement, and I want to cherish ICE because ICE does a fantastic job. So, what they do for us is so unrecognized how good a job they do. So we want to take care of them, and we want to hold them very close because they do a good job.
But the question, to be clear, though, the question,
Thank you very much.
Why are you
sit down?
But you didn't answer my question. Just very simply, the question is, why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
I'm not.
Is that how you view citizens of this country?
I'll tell you what. We won a lot of elections last night We did very well last night.
But in many ways,
I think
it's going to have.
I think it's going to have a very positive impact. I watched NBC this morning. They didn't report it exactly correctly, but that's that's the fact with NBC. Nothing I can do about that. But I want this country to have protection. We want security in our country. I want security, Peter. I mean, you maybe don't think it's so important, and I think when you don't have it, you are indeed unleashing crime. I feel that.
You said you would sign an executive order on birthright citizenship. Are you still going to sign the executive order on birthright citizenship?
You'll ask me that question a little bit later. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. The investigation by the special counsel Robert Mueller has been going on since last spring. It's been over your head.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been over your head, over Republicans' head, during the midterms as well. Is this an opportunity for you, Mr. President, to end that investigation? Would you consider removing Mr. Mueller from his position?
I could have ended it any time I wanted. I didn't. And there was no collusion. There was no anything. I didn't. They went after hackers in Moscow. I don't know about that. They went after people with tax problems from years ago. They went after people with loans and other things. Had nothing to do with my campaign. This is a investigation where many, many millions of dollars has been spent, and there's no collusion. It was supposed to be on collusion. There's no collusion, and I think it's very bad for our country. I will tell you. I think it's a shame. And a poll came out today, by the way, from NBC, or at least I saw it on NBC, where a majority of the people do not agree with the Mueller investigation, or it wasn't approved. They have approval and disapproval, and it had a much higher disapproval. It should end, because it's very bad for our country.
So if it's bad...
And I'm not just talking about the tremendous expense. And the other thing is they should look at the other side also. They only look at one side. They're not looking at all of the things that came up during this investigation. They don't do that. They should also get people that can be fair, not 13 or 14 or 17. I call them the angry Democrats. They are angry people. And it's a very unfair thing for this country. It's a very, forget about unfair to me, it's very bad for our country.
Okay. So, Mr. President, if it's Mr. President, just wait, if it's unfair to the country and it's costing millions of dollars, why don't you just
give him the mic, please? I've answered the question. Okay. Go ahead, take the. Well, I'll give you I will give you voter suppression. You just have to sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I didn't call you. I'll give you voter suppression. Take a look at the CNN polls, how inaccurate they were. That's called voter suppression. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not responding. I'm responding to... Excuse me, I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Will you please sit down? Excuse me, would you please sit down? Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that the House of Representatives
very hostile. It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You asked me about... No, you rudely interrupted him. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do your demands remain the same to the United States Congress on immigration in exchange for a DACA fix, in exchange for an amnesty for 1.7 million? Are you willing to change any of those demands that you gave to Congress earlier?
I think we could really do something having to do with DACA. And what really happened with DACA, we could have done some pretty good work on DACA, but a judge ruled that DACA was okay. Had the judge not ruled that way, I think we would have made a deal. Once the judge ruled that way, the Democrats didn't want to talk anymore. So we'll see how it works out at the Supreme Court.